Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a bit ambitious, kind of a speed run through about 250,000 years of human history. But the goal isn't just, ticking off dates. We want to zero in on the 5 basic types of societies and, crucially, what actually drove the changes between them. We're looking at how these big shifts in tech and economy just completely rewrite the rules, who gets the power, what counts as wealth, even down to gender roles. It's like a shortcut through civilization's evolution.
It really is. And when you look at the source material we're drawing on, the time frame is just massive. We're starting, like you said, 250,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It highlights this constant cycle. Humans innovate, technology changes, and that new tech dissolves the old way of doing things. But it always leaves behind new conflicts, new opportunities.
Okay, great. So let's start at the very beginning then. The original society, the one that lasted the absolute longest, hunting and gathering. This society's kicked off about 250,000 years back. Their whole existence was based on hunting animals and gathering plants, which meant they had to be nomadic.
Exactly. Always on the move.
Small groups, maybe a few dozen people, just following the food source, basically.
And that constant movement is absolutely critical to understanding them. The maybe surprising thing is that equality wasn't some lofty ideal. It was practical. You just couldn't really pile up possessions if you had to carry everything yourself.
Right. No U-Hauls back then.
Yeah, exactly. So our sources really stress this. Power was shared pretty equally. Men often hunted, women often gathered, but because there wasn't stored wealth, there wasn't much hierarchy. No real basis for lasting dominance by any one group or person. It was, in a way, pure economic democracy by necessity.
Okay, so that's the baseline. But that egalitarian setup, it didn't stick around forever. The first big split happens, around 10,000 or 12,000 years ago? That's when horticultural and pastoral societies emerged.
Yes, and this is a huge transition. It's the first time humans figured out how to consistently produce more food than they immediately needed, the surplus, and just as important, how to keep it. This usually involves settling down, at least partially.
So how did they do it? Two main ways.
You had horticultural societies using simple tools like hoes, basically hand tools, to cultivate small plots of land. Gardens, really. And then you had pastoral societies who focused on domesticating animals, sheep, goats, sometimes camels, for food, transport, everything.
And the pastoralists were maybe a bit more nomadic still, following grazing lands?
Generally, yes. More mobile than the gardeners, definitely. But the core change for both was the surplus.
And here's the kicker. That surplus, the sources say, immediately introduces inequality.
Instantly. The moment you have stored value, whether it's grain or animals, you have property.
And property needs managing, defending.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wealth suddenly became something you could count. How many animals do you own? How much land does your group control? That's the seed of the class system right there.
Conflict over resources begins. So that first technological step, basic farming, animal herding, it didn't just make life easier, it fundamentally redefined power. And, created the haves and have-nots.
Precisely. Technology isn't neutral. It reshapes society.
Okay, so if the hoe and the herd created that first divide, the next invention, the plow, just blows things wide open. This takes us into the agricultural era. About 5,000 years ago, Middle East starts seeing this. The plow is a game changer for farming efficiency. Suddenly, you can cultivate vast areas.
It's a massive leap. And it wasn't just the plow in isolation. This period, you also see the invention of the wheel. Written language, numbers, it all happens around the same time.
Because you needed ways to manage these bigger harvests, bigger population.
Absolutely. Think about it. Huge food surpluses mean you can support people who aren't farming. Soldiers, priests, administrators, artisans.
The beginning of specialization. And the state.
And the state, exactly. Centralized power, bureaucracy.
Yeah.
This is ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, Rome, Imperial China. Even parts of India today still reflect this structure.
But the social cost, inequality goes from being maybe incidental to being systemic, baked into the structure.
Totally baked in. Get this huge gulf between wealthy landowners, the elite controlling the state apparatus, and the vast majority who are peasants working the land. It's not just wealth difference. It becomes rigid social strata. Castes, almost. Fighting over land, yes, but also over control of the state itself.
And this is where we see a really dramatic shift in gender roles, too, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. The sources are pretty clear on this. In hunting and gathering plants, often women's work was vital, gave them a certain standing. But agricultural society, it revolves around heavy, continuous field labor, using the plow, managing large draft animals. This work overwhelmingly fell to men.
And that physical labor translated directly into social power.
It did. The dominant economic activity dictated the social structure. So you see the rise of strong patriarchal systems, societies where men are explicitly seen as dominant, justified by their control over food production.
Women's roles become increasingly confined to the household, childcare, less public power, less economic power.
A major shift from those egalitarian roots, all driven, initially, by that one piece of tech, the plow.
Incredible. So one tool reshapes farming, creates the state, fuels population booms, and locks in class and gender hierarchies for literally thousands of years. Okay, that deeply entrenched agricultural world eventually faces its own disruption. The next stage, industrial societies. The industrial contradiction, as you called it earlier.
Right, we jump way forward now to the 1700s. This is the age of machines. Factories, powered first by water and steam, then later electricity, start replacing hand tools and farm labor on a massive scale. The transformation is, well, explosive doesn't even quite cover it. Society changed more in 200 years than it had in the previous 4,000.
And it's a real paradox, this era. On one side, you get undeniable progress, amazing technological breakthroughs, medicine improves, people start living longer. Plus, you see the beginnings of widespread political freedoms, at least the idea of them, and genuine social mobility. You know, the whole rags to riches dream, that wasn't really possible before on a large scale.
True. The potential was there. Industrialism generated wealth like never before. But, and this is the huge but, it came at a staggering social cost. Factories needed workers, lots of them, all crammed together. So you get rapid, often chaotic urbanization, overcrowded cities, terrible living conditions for many, poverty, poor sanitation, and with that density and anonymity, social bonds weaken. Life becomes more impersonal.
And you see crime rise dramatically.
Definitely. Urban violence becomes a major issue, which is why we suddenly need formal, organized police forces for the first time. And eventually, things got so bad you needed labor laws, reforms, just to keep the system from completely breaking down.
So solving one set of problems created a whole new, very urban set of problems.
Precisely. And that's not even touching on the environmental side. Industrial societies are hungry. They devour resources, coal, oil, timber, metals.
Pollution becomes a major issue.
A massive issue. And on a global scale, you get the development of incredibly destructive weapons, also products of industrial power. So, yeah, it solved scarcity for some, but created pollution and new kinds of global threats for everyone.
Okay, which brings us right up to basically the present day, or at least the very recent past, the fifth stage, post-industrial societies, driven by the information revolution. We're living through this shift right now, aren't we? Moving away from making physical things in factories.
Towards providing services, working with information, using computers. The economy's center of gravity shifts.
There's that great analogy from the source material. Think about the symbol of the 1920s versus today.
Right. The Ford Model T, the assembly line that was the 1920s. Fast forward to the early 21st century, and the symbol is the smartphone, the network, the algorithm.
The workplace itself changes, from the factory floor to the laptop screen, essentially.
Exactly. Sociologists started tracking this back in the late 20th century. Daniel Bell called it the post-industrial shift. Robert Hassan specifically talks about the rise of the information society. It's about processing knowledge, not just raw materials.
Okay, but we know the pattern by now. New technology, new society, new forms of inequality. The industrial age had the factory owner versus the worker. What's the divide in the information age? We hear digital divide, but what does that really mean?
Well, it's evolved even since that term became common. It's not just about having internet access anymore, though that's still an issue. The core mechanism now relates to the unique nature of information itself.
How so?
Unlike, say, land or steel, digital information software, data, network access can be copied and distributed globally at almost zero extra cost. It's infinitely scalable. In a way, physical goods aren't.
So one person or company can reach billions instantly.
Precisely. That scalability allows for incredible concentration of wealth and power. Think about giant tech platforms, financial algorithms, specialized knowledge. The returns on those are potentially astronomical.
So the fight shifts again. It's less about owning the factory, more about controlling the network or owning the crucial algorithm or data.
Exactly. Or possessing the highly specialized skills needed to create and manage those things. This is why that gap W.J. Wilson talked about keeps widening the gap between the educated haves with those digital skills and the have-nots without them. The rewards for being on the right side of that divide are just enormous.
Which makes you wonder, is this digital divide truly new or just the old capital versus labor divide wearing a new digital coat? Something for you, the listener, to maybe think about.
It's definitely related, but the form of power has changed. Physical location matters less, physical resources matter less, access to information, networks, and the skills to use them, that's the new high ground. And you see this globally, right? The nations and economies that specialize in these post-industrial sectors, software, finance, biotech, digital services, they're gaining a significant edge.
So, recapping this whirlwind tour, we went from the incredible long-term stability of hunting and gathering
Millennia upon millennia.
to the agricultural age, also very long and stable, defined by the plow and the power of the state. Then, boom, acceleration. The industrial age changes everything in centuries.
And the post-industrial age, driven by the microchip and the network, feels like it's changing things even faster. Decades, sometimes years.
And that underlying pattern just keeps repeating.
Relentlessly. Every big technological leap solves an old problem, how to get enough food, how to make things efficiently, how to process information. But every single time, it creates a new form of inequality, a new resource to fight over. We fought over animals, then land, then capital and factories. Now, it's increasingly about skills, knowledge, data, network control.
Which leaves us and you with a final thought to wrestle with. If wealth and power were measured first by herds, then by acres, then by factories, and now by digital fluency and access, what comes next? What will be the defining resource, the key marker of power and division in the next type of society? And maybe more importantly, what little signs of that future shift can you already see emerging around you today?